By the morning light, these 4 individuals will be decomposing in the hot Texas heat, while this one survives not just the night, but a night with the Sawyer family. Summer of '73 finds these 5 kids out on a road trip through the desolate farmlands of East Texas. After checking on the final resting places of some relatives after a rash of grave robbings, they continue on. They pick up a hitchhiker, common in the '70s, but bad mistake at this time. This guy was a total freak who babbles on about slaughterhouses and then slashes Franklin with a knife when he refuses to fork over $2 for a photo that he took of him. This should have been a firm indicator of just how all the locals act, and they should have just prayed their gas supply held out until they got a little closer back to civilization. But naive as they seemed, they stop at a gas station with more weirdos. It's like 110 outside. Are these people completely ignorant to the benefits of shorts, hats, and sunglasses? You got this guy staring straight into the sun. They mention the old abandoned house over yonder belonging to Sally and Franklin's family, and though they're warned against hanging around in some old house, off they go anyways. I'm sure they would have ended up as bologna sandwiches anyways, but the guy did warn them. Some people just can't take a hint. Arriving at the abandoned house, the fun really starts. Enter Leatherface, without whom this movie would have been about as boring as toast. Not to spoil the kill methods for the half-dozen people left on the planet who have yet to see this movie, but 2 guys are taken down with sledgehammers. I accidentally hit my kneecap with a chasing hammer once when I was a teenager, and I almost cried. I can't imagine taking a sledge to the head. Not that it's funny or anything, but the look on this guy's face and his unearthly scream as Leatherface comes at him is nothing short of brilliant. The only chainsaw kill in the movie was Franklin, who was my least favorite of all the doomed characters. Leatherface catches him and Sally in the woods. She manages to flee, and while it's dark and you can't see much, you can only guess that Leatherface swung that chainsaw enough times to make sure there wouldn't be much of anything left to identify who might have been sitting in that chair when the coroners came to shovel him up. The one that always made me cringe and still watch through squinted eyes was when Leatherface catches Pam. She enters the house looking for one of the aforementioned sledgehammer boys. She goes into the living room, which has furniture made of human bones, skulls swinging about, chicken feathers, shit and God only knows what else all over the place. She becomes nauseated and attempts to flee as Leatherface bangs open that metal pocket door and goes after her. She barely makes it to the front door before he pulls her back in and carries her, arms and legs flailing, to the kitchen where, in most horror movies, they leave it to the imagination on what happens next and they just cut to the next scene. But we know that if these 2 guys get their brains turned to mush, they're going to show what happens to her, and holy shit do they ever. He walks her over and hangs her on a large meat hook, and it's so realistic that you can almost feel it pushing into your back and up between your shoulder blades as your feet desperately try to find the floor. It's a jarring scene to watch, and it's a perfect example of why this movie works so well. You see the title has the word chainsaw in it, and you automatically think it's going to be a bloodbath. And other filmmakers who leaned more heavily into the splatter genre might have done just that. But it takes a genius to recognize when less means more in some cases, and in this movie, you don't really see much in the way of blood or baths, and yet the kill scenes are just as memorable and alarming as anything you might find in a Herschel Gordon Lewis movie. The scariest point in the movie is about the final 15 minutes or so. The Sawyers have Sally tied up at the dinner table, and they're going to town on her. Even though she escapes, the psychological trauma of that experience is something no shrink would ever be able to cure. They wheel out some old guy who looks to be about 100 years old. They cut her finger and stick it in his mouth, and he sucks on it. They hold her down while repeatedly attempting to get the old guy to hit her with the sledgehammer. She finally breaks free and jumps out a window. They give chase, and the hitchhiker from earlier in the movie, who you would have guessed would have made a later appearance, chases her down the long driveway with Leatherface, now cutely clad in a suit and lipstick, not too far behind them. They're sure to recapture her, but then... Oh, did I mention the fun fact? These 2 brilliant actors remain close friends for life after this movie, and Edwin Neal delivered the eulogy at Marilyn Burns' funeral when she passed away. Oh, we're not done yet. Unfreeze. Hitchhikers are supposed to get in the vehicle, not under it. And now the final moments as she barely gets away from a limping Leatherface, and he almost gets her with his chainsaw. The sight of him trying to run after her and his little freak-out dance he does before the screen cuts to black is something your worst nightmare wouldn't even come close to matching. But at least she got away. She'll be crazier than a shithouse rat for the rest of her life, but she's alive. Thank you for watching. I have plenty of free subscriptions to hand out, so grab while the grabbing is good, and I'll see you at the next slaughtering. Bye now.